Welcome to my review of Blazing Chrome for the Xbox One. I believe it was on PS4 and PC, but I played it on Xbox One. It took me around 3 hours and 30 minutes to beat. You have a choice of a few different characters in the beginning, and they actually do play differently from what I remember, so that gives some variety to the gameplay. You also have a few different difficulty settings you can play on. I showed it here, but I don't remember which difficulty I played on. I'm not sure if I did a tutorial on this one, but if I did, I'll include it in the description. I definitely did a complete playthrough, though, so I'll at least link that. But yeah, this game is kind of like a mixture of, Contra, Metal Slug, games like that. So if you enjoy those kind of games, then I already will highly recommend this. So you have your set of lives, as you can see here. And I believe there's checkpoints in the stages, if I remember right. I don't remember how the penalty system was, though, as far as if it sends you back if you lose all your lives, or if it's checkpoint to checkpoint the whole way through. There's some nuances like that I don't remember because I probably beat this a few years ago. But I remember enough about the game that, to review it, that it was a really good game. And it's one I highly recommend to anyone who likes Contra Hardcore or any of the Contra games, Metal Slug. So you have your up-close attack, which I believe does pretty good damage. So sometimes you want to use that. And you have your standard shots. I believe you have a few different weapons that you can select between, but I think you have to pick them up on the field. And you may lose them if you die. So yeah, I see here that you do respawn where you died when you lose a life. And I believe if you lose all your lives, you'll be sent back to the last checkpoint, if I remember right. But like I said, it's still a little hazy. I don't really remember having to redo the entire stage, but like I said, it has been a while. But I'm pretty sure it's checkpoint to checkpoint. And of course, unlimited continues, I believe. Some of the harder difficulties, it might have a mode where I think hardcore mode might be where you have limited continues, if I remember right. So I may have beaten it on normal. It's starting to come back to me a little bit. But, some games are so fucking similar, sometimes it's easy to mix up modes and things like that. So, basically, like you said, it's your standard gameplay of memorizing and reacting with these type of games. Just like you would in Contra 3, Alien Wars for any, Super NES or Contra Hardcore, any of these type of games. And most likely, people who are interested in this game are most likely going to be people who are experienced players of those type of games. But, of course, some new players may be trying these kind of games for the first time, especially if you didn't grow up with these kind of games. Though it is kind of hard to miss these kind of games because they're so popular now with indie games and everything. It's really brought these retro-style games back into the, into the spotlight. So, it's definitely, I think, increased awareness of these older games. And that's what this pretty much is. This is like this is that old style, you know what I mean? And it's done really well. The pixel art is really good. Presentation. And, the gameplay is the main thing, and the gameplay is really tight, really well done. I would say it's one of the better games in this style, even comparing it to the old games from that time that were, kind of mastered this style of gameplay. And I would say it's up there with most of those. It was very good. It might even be better than a number of those, from what I remember. But, of course, it's going to be up to you how much you enjoy it. And, the atmosphere may play a role in how much you enjoy the game as well. I thought it was really well done, though. I thought it really mimicked that old style really well. And it kind of does its own thing with, it takes things from these games, but it adds its own, spin on it. And it can be pretty challenging. But, it wasn't too bad for me challenge-wise, because I'm used to these kind of games. But for players that aren't used to it, the easier mode may not be too bad. I don't think I tried that. So that might be an option. It seems to have pretty good difficulty options. Though, I didn't really test it because it was pretty straightforward for me which difficulty I wanted to play. I didn't want to play hardcore mode for my first playthrough because, obviously, I don't want limited continues on my first time playing the game because I don't even know what to expect. I want to at least learn the game. So for me, it was easy to pick normal, and I don't want to play an easy mode where it's like super fucking easy, no resistance. So I like a challenge. So Normal, I think, is the perfect starting difficulty if you're familiar with these type of games and you just want a challenging playthrough for your first playthrough. And of course, hardcore is there if you want to try to beat it on limited lives and continues. So that's always an option. There's also a boss rush mode, which is really, really fun. You can just fight the bosses only. And it's like an endurance with the bosses, and it is easy to die and then have to restart it, but I don't think I completed boss rush mode. But you also unlock a new playable character, I believe, after you beat the game. One of them you get is this ninja that's really, really interesting in the way it plays. It really changes the game up because the ninja really specializes in doing super powerful close-range attacks with his sword. And they do a lot more damage, and I think he has like really close-range attacks, basically. So it changes the way you play. But you also do a lot more damage if you know how to utilize the ninja. You can do massive damage. And he's probably the fastest character to use if you wanted to speedrun the game and beat the game, fast, because he seems to kill shit really fast. So he's got that power, but he has some limitations, so you got to get used to using him. But it does change up the gameplay, and I like that they give you different ways to play the game with the different characters. Especially the ninja. The ninja really stood out as a totally different kind of character from the others. So that was a very cool unlockable. I believe you unlock that for beating the main game. That's what I remember. And then, of course, you unlock the boss rush mode, too, so then you can use him in the boss rush mode, and that's mainly where I played as him. I was fucking around with him in the boss rush mode, and you could really tear through bosses. It was a really fun way to play, but it also took a lot of skill. And, you had to be able to get close to the bosses and play aggressively to really do well with that character. But it was satisfying when you did, so that was definitely cool. But yeah, pretty much, the game is a good length. If I remember right, it might be around an hour when it was edited down, with all the excess continues that I wasted edited down. It might have been like an hour or something like that. Maybe a little bit longer. It was a good length for this kind of game. It's pretty much a standard length for the games of this time period, from what I remember. Though, I'd really have to check to see how long it was, because it may have even been longer than an hour. It may have been a few hours long, but I just don't remember. Now here you have these 3D type stages that take off of like Super Turrican 2 and games like that, which is very cool to see. A throwback to like Super Turrican 2 for the Super NES that had these kind of stages. So you get some variety, and you even get to fight a boss in this perspective, which is very cool. It just changes up gameplay. You also have motorbike sequences where you're on motorcycles, and sometimes you have to run away from shit on the motorcycle. Sometimes you got to jump and dodge shit while fighting. So there's a nice combination of gameplay. The bosses, a lot of them are multi-phase, so a lot of them are pretty detailed, where you have to go through multiple phases of a boss, and the fights can last pretty long. So it's all very well designed. It's definitely a step up from a lot of games from the time that it's based on. I mean, this could definitely even beat a lot of the old games, I would say. Like Super Contra 3, or Contra 3, and Hardcore and all that shit. It's definitely a competitor for those games. And like I said, it's arguably even better designed than those games, but that's kind of a more nuanced type of discussion as far as what you like better. But the gameplay is all intact here, and it adds things that some of those games didn't even have. I think you have that roll too, which is a way to dodge. I don't know if the roll has invincibility frames when you do the roll, or if it's just a way to move fast out of the way of something. I don't remember it having like invincibility frames, but it can be useful to get out of the way quick. So it gives you an extra evasive maneuver, which is very useful. So this is the final stage, which is pretty much just a final boss rush. Or final boss fight. I think it's just the final boss, but it's a long fight. And I'm going to show the full thing here, so just be aware of that. And this is a good example of a final multiple phase boss fight. So I thought it would be cool to show, and I like to show the ending of a lot of these older style games, since I don't think the story is going to be as significant. But some players, may consider that still spoiler. But this was a cool fight. You start off fighting this smaller, mech type of boss, and then he kind of, he gets grounded for a while where you fight him. And you have to go through all the forms on the 5 lives or so that you have on this mode. And of course, if you waste to continue, you'll start this fight from the beginning. It can be a long fight. So this is one of the more challenging parts of the game. So after you defeat his first few forms, now you're going to fight the robot form, which goes on for a while. But it's a very cool fight. You go into these virtual reality type things that remind me a little bit of Lawnmower Man for the Super Nintendo. Not a good game. You know, it was okay, but you know, that game had some cool ideas with the virtual reality areas that you would go into, like Cyber War and all this kind of shit. But it reminds me a little bit of that when you transition into those virtual reality segments. I may have a tutorial on this game, and if I do, I go into all the details on how to dodge everything and do all this shit. It's been a while, but if I do have a tutorial, I will definitely link it in the description. I just don't remember if I made a tutorial on this one. I know I have a playthrough, though, of this game. And I believe I did do a tutorial, but not 100% sure. So now you go in this virtual reality type of segment, which is really cool. Basically got fucking squares moving around and shit, but you got to kind of, position yourself and dodge shit and take enemies out. And it definitely takes some practice to get these parts down. They can be tricky because, you can get overwhelmed by the amount of shit that appears at once, so you gotta be able to clear shit out and move at the same time. So it's a nice challenge, and it's definitely a fitting final boss fight that's challenging and enjoyable to beat, satisfying. Which I think a satisfying conclusion is always important in a game. To have a challenging final boss fight with a satisfying conclusion for this type of game. So it definitely does that. But yeah, this game, for an indie side-scrolling game that's based on older games, this might be one of the best ones that I've played. Though I'd put Valfaris over this. I highly recommend checking out Valfaris. If you're interested in these kind of games, I like that game even better than this. But I would say this is one of the best of these type of games that I've played. You know what I mean? Especially for like indie games trying to replicate that old style. I think this is one of the best side-scrolling Contra-style shooters that I've played, or side-scrolling action games for these indie games. So this is one I highly recommend. It's extremely enjoyable, satisfying game. It's challenging. And it gives you a lot of replay with the different characters, and then you have, of course, the boss rush mode, which you can play with any character. And that's just the bosses. And I believe there's no continues in that. Or I don't even know if there's any lives. I think you just have to beat it on... You might have to beat it just on one life. I'm not sure exactly how it works, or if you get... if you can earn extra lives and all that shit. I don't remember all the smaller details. But it's something like that. It's basically an endurance type of thing with all the bosses. And there may also be a time attack or something like that with the bosses. I don't remember all the modes and everything, but I remember the boss rush mode was a very cool unlockable. And something that I was planning to mess around with more. But I just didn't end up playing it a lot. But I remember playing it with the ninja, and it was a really cool way to play the boss fights. It made them feel a lot different. Like I said, because his playstyle is very different. He has to get up close to the bosses, but at the same time he does way more damage. So it was cool. So now you finish off this boss in its final human form again. You have to finish it off, and you see I barely made it here. I was down to the last. But yeah, awesome game. For me, it's a 9 out of 10. I highly recommend the game. And it's definitely one you shouldn't miss if you're into these kind of games. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.